Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, salam alaikum, shalom, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We would love for you to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at readingwithyourkids on Instagram, at Jedley Magic on Twitter. Our guest today is F.C. Shaw. She is the author of the Sherlock Academy series. We are really excited to have FC here to tell us about Moriarty's Final Threat, the latest and the last book in the Sherlock Academy series. I'm also really excited to let you know that my educational magic show, We Will Roar, Respect Others and Read, is now available to go anywhere in the world via Zoom. I've worked with some of the most amazing magical performers in the world to transform my show, to create a whole new show that is just amazing and fun and inspirational and, best of all, totally interactive. That was one of the things that I was most concerned about. My show for decades has always been about bringing kids up on stage and letting them stand in the spotlight, letting them make the magic happen. And I was concerned, being thousands of miles away from kids, how can we do that? How can we replicate that with technology? Well, thanks to the help of these incredible performers and magical minds, we've done it, and we'd love to share it with you. Love to come into your classroom via technology and inspire your kids to respect everyone they meet, and also to make sure they carve out time every single day to read. You can learn all about it by going to our website, wewillroar.com. Joining us right now from the beautiful Central Coast area of California, she is the author of a fantastic middle grade series known as Sherlock Academy. Please welcome to the show, F.C. Shaw. Farrah, how are you?
I'm great. I'm so happy to be on the air with you.
I'm so excited to have you here. It's middle grade books, middle grade series. I have such fond memories of being back in middle school, 7th and 8th grade in particular, and there was this one series that I absolutely devoured, and it just brought me so much joy to my life to have this series, to have these characters, to be able to go and read them and kind of take me away on adventures. And I know that there's thousands and thousands of middle school kids that have felt the same way about Sherlock Academy. So congratulations about that.
Thank you. Yeah, middle grade is definitely my sweet spot of my childhood as well. And it's the kind of golden age of childhood when I fell in love with reading and then started writing my own stories. And so I kind of joke that I'm like forever a 12-year-old kid by heart. And I just love writing for that age. And because I think it's when I had the fondest memories for myself with reading.
Being a perpetual 12-year-old is okay. Being a perpetual 13 or 14-year-old might be a problem.
Yes, I agree. 12 and a half is even pushing it, but.
So give us the thumbnail description of Sherlock's Academy.
Okay, so Sherlock Academy is a school in London, and it is in the original 221 Baker Street apartment where Sherlock Holmes and Watson lived. And the series follows Raleigh and his best friend Cecily. They get invited to attend the academy. And at the academy, they take classes that teach them how to be detectives like Sherlock Holmes. So they take a class on decoding ciphers. They take a class on analyzing fingerprints, a class on how to wear disguises, that sort of thing. And while they're there, there is a mystery that unravels about a villain who is wanting to close the school and target Raleigh specifically for reasons I cannot disclose. But that is the thumbnail description of Sherlock Academy, and it's a 5-book series.
Now, one of the things you were sharing with me before we went on the air is that the latest book, Moriarty's Final Threat, is also the final book in the series.
Yes.
What's that feeling like? Is it kind of, oh, great, I finally completed this, or, oh, great, I finished it?
It was definitely a mixed bag. It felt so good to finish the series. It felt even better for the entire series to be published, because the publishing industry is up and down. And so you just never know what's going to happen, if all of your books are going to make it onto the shelf. And so I am just so grateful that the entire series was published. When I was writing the last book, I felt sort of the pressure of having to obviously culminate the entire series, tie up every loose end, and deliver a good climax to my readers. But I felt very proud of it when it was finished. But I may have cried when I was reading my final draft. Because it was like sort of closing a door.
Now, I'm wondering, since you knew this was going to be the last in this beloved series, did you feel any pressure? Anything inside you saying, I have to hit this out of the park? I don't want to disappoint people like people were disappointed in the final episode of the Game of Thrones series. Was that in your mind?
It was, but then at the same time, I also know that I think there is always going to be someone who's disappointed with a finale. And I don't even think it has to do with the actual story or the wrap up. I think it's honestly, we as an audience are not willing to admit it's over. So instead of admitting that we're just like bummed that it's over, we try to like find a problem with the finale. Now, granted, there have been some finales of shows and stuff where I'm just like, oh, I don't know if that was done well. But I definitely had that pressure of like, yes, I don't want it to disappoint, fans, but then also knowing like there's always going to be someone who is not totally satisfied. And I think that's just the nature of a finale.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm wondering now, my daughter's in the music business, so I've had the pleasure of meeting a lot of artists. And one of the things they tell me is that, their first album, a band or an artist who has that first album, that's a mega hit. There's a tremendous amount of pressure when album 2 comes along, because that band may have worked on that first album for 5 or 10 or 15 years, and now it's a hit.
Right.
And now you're going to get another one out there in a year. You don't have another 10 years to create the second album. Was that something that you experienced in creating Sherlock Academy?
There were moments with that when I was like moving on to the next book where I sort of was like, oh, how can I top that, idea or that, mystery in a previous book? But one thing that I did with the series is I had this overarching mystery that started from book 1 and carried through the entire series. So it sort of kept the momentum throughout the series in that way. And so I just sort of built and built and built on that thread. And I didn't hit too many walls in terms of like, how can I come up with a new idea? How can I, because it was sort of just this building story where, technically you could put all 5 books to be one massive book, So I looked at it as more of like, this is one big story and I'm just sort of chopping it, up into bite-sized pieces, basically.
Well, I think that was a good choice. I remember reading, I think it was Stephen King's The Stand, and I think that was like 1,500 pages. And it was, it was great, and I loved it, but that was the last book over 300 or 400 pages that I ever picked.
Right. Well, it's still a marvel that J.K. Rowling got away with like the size of her, novels, like especially for middle grade. But it's like she can't be touched. She can do anything she wants.
Yes, and indeed. I stand corrected. I did read the first book in that series out loud to my son when he was in first or second grade.
Aww.
But he loved it so much. No, it was okay. We had fun, and he loved it. So when book 2 and 3 came out, he was like, I got this, Dad. I can do this on my own. And I'm like,
right.
Tell us about your main character, a little bit more about Rolly Wilson. What inspired you to create that character?
So Raleigh is he's the middle child in a large family, and he has 2 older twin brothers and 2 younger twin sisters. So he has no twin, and he's smack dab in the middle in this bustling household. And I sort of drew inspiration just from my own experience of being in a really large family and how everyone loves you, but sometimes they can forget about you in the hustle and bustle. And so that's kind of where we meet Raleigh, is in the hustle and bustle of his family, where they're all doing their own thing, until he gets this letter of invitation, and it sort of singles him out as special, even within his own family. And so through this series, Raleigh really comes into his own as an individual who, you know, kind of found his own niche with Sherlock Academy, and eventually his family is like really proud of him and supportive. And so he kind of starts off as kind of a quiet kid, you know, who likes Sherlock Holmes, but hasn't really found his place in the world. And then he does at Sherlock Academy as he grows into being a detective. So
that's cool. You know, Raleigh sounds like a lot of kids, or at least sounds like what a lot of kids feel, you know, no matter what, they kind of feel, oh, no one appreciates me, no one knows who I really am. Do you have a lot of kids say, hey, I'm a lot like Raleigh?
I do, yeah. And I think that no matter, you know, what kind of family you're in, what school you go to, whether you have a ton of friends or one best friend, or you're still finding a friend, like, I think there's situations in life where we, at some point or another, always feel like we don't quite fit in. And for me as a kid, I was writing stories all the time. And so I liked to sort of be alone and just write and write and write. And I didn't have any friends who wrote stories. And so I was sort of just like in my own little world writing stories. And so that was sort of inspiration I drew from Raleigh too, of just like, yeah, I remember being there as a kid, of like, where exactly do I fit in the world? Because I really like to do this, and a lot of my friends don't, or, you know, that sort of thing. So yeah, and I have had a lot of kids tell me that. And Raleigh has some really fun quirks. Like, he's a super picky eater. Which I drew inspiration from my husband, who's a super picky eater. I joke that he would like live on a preschool diet of like macaroni and cheese and peanut butter and jelly. Now granted, we've been married 13 years as of today, actually, and he has come a really long way in trying new food. So, but I've had even kids say like, yeah, I'm totally like Raleigh. I'm super picky eater too. So I hope that the little quirks of Raleigh draw kids in and help kids connect to the character, so that then when the deeper parts of Raleigh come out, such as like having to make a choice to do the right thing, or having to question himself, am I really brave? Am I really courageous? Those deeper character qualities, I hope that draws kids in to think about themselves of, am I brave? You know, am I choosing to do the right thing? What special skills do I have? And so I hope that the two kind of go hand in hand.
Well, I can't go further without first congratulating on 13 years of marriage. That is wonderful. That's wonderful. You got to give your husband a pat in the back from me. I, too, am a peanut butter and jelly aficionado.
Yes, it's quite the household staple. So, because I have 4 kids and 3 of them are already picky. So.
Well, you know, but you gotta admit, if they're gonna be picky for anything, being picky for PB&J, I mean, that's pretty easy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, totally. And Cheez-Its to go with it.
You know, I love the fact that this series helps kids kind of get at those deeper questions about what are my qualities, what are my super skills, and you know, am I going to be able to make those right choices when I'm challenged in life?
Right. Yeah. And I really wanted to set out to make characters who become heroes based on like everyday qualities of like courage and bravery, deductive reasoning skills, you know, working with friends, working as a team. And I sort of like the idea that these were just kids. They didn't have any special like superpowers or anything. I mean, which I love those kind of stories too. But I just wanted to have kids who just use their brains and their hearts to save the day, basically. Yeah, well, those are the kids that actually exist in the world. It's true. It's very true. Yeah, wonderful.
I'm excited for this. I'm curious now that the Sherlock Academy is coming to a close. Is there a new series that you're working on?
So I have another book out that I wrote sort of like in between the Sherlock Academy series. And it's out. It's called The Magical Flight of Dodie, and it is about a world of flying magic carpets and about a kid who enters a magic carpet race to basically save his brother's life. And that book, as of now, the first book is out, but I have a sequel written. And so that's one of those things that I'm keeping my fingers crossed about publishing out the rest of that series too. So that was kind of a fun little diversion because it was the opposite of Sherlock Academy in terms of it being set in a magical world. Mm-hmm. And the main character, Dodie, he doesn't have any magic powers or anything. And in fact, he has a fear of flying. And so the story, and so he's a total outcast in his society because everybody flies magic carpets. But it's just about him overcoming his fear and again, sort of, choosing to do the right thing and overcome his fear for the love of his brother.
Now, this is a theme that kind of goes through all of your books, this idea of kids doing the right thing, and, especially when people aren't looking. Why is that so important to you?
It's always been important to me. I just think, I don't know, I've always been drawn just to sort of the hero stories. I love a good story about courage and bravery. And I think right now in particular, there's just a lot of fear mongering going on in the world. And my hope is that my books would inspire kids to not be fearful, to not live in fear and to sort of combat the fear that is in the world and in life, with courage and bravery, because I feel like those are the type of people who can really make a difference in the world. And I start just with telling kids, be brave to be creative. It takes a lot of courage to be creative and to have your creativity out there in the world. And so when I talk to kids, I encourage them, what do you love to do? What are you creative in? Is it writing stories, doing art? What drives your heart? And just encouraging them to be brave, to be creative in the world. It's a good place to start in terms of changing the world or just adding some beauty to the world, which I think we can all agree that we constantly need. So that's my hope.
Absolutely. As you were speaking, I have this thought that we're in a unique time right now that it seems like if kids want the truth, they're more likely to find truth in a fictional story, especially when we're talking about truth of making the right choices as opposed to what they're seeing in the media. It seems like, and it's on both sides, no matter, the news media that had always been that trusted source of information, everything is slanted. And it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, every story you can listen to two different channels and hear the same story and have completely different information and a completely different stance on it. And meanwhile, there's so many books and series out there like Sherlock Academy that just talks about, time-honored truth of, doing the right thing, being there, being courageous, standing up for yourself, standing up for each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I agree. And I think that's what's so unique about a story is it does have a powerful impact. And I think especially now story is, very important. And I am always encouraging, parents, read aloud to your kids, encourage your kids to read, read in front of your kids. I always believe that most things are caught and not taught, so read in front of your kids. We learn to read so that we can interpret other people's ideas about the world and other people's, ideas about life. Yeah. And so I just think there is something so impactful about a story. And maybe it's because we're all stories, mm-hmm. we all have our own little story that we're living out. And especially a story that feeds the imagination. Mm-hmm. I really believe that art is an antidote to despair, and that imagination is so key for us to have in order to look beyond our circumstances or to imagine a better life or imagine what we could be or who we could be. And I think a story really is a seed for that, of planting that imagination and just getting in the habit of using imagination. And so I think there's something really impactful about that.
And I love that, even though you're a middle grade author, you're encouraging families to read together, because it's so important for kids in those middle grades to continue that connection with their families. And reading a series like Sherlock Academy really gives families a really safe opportunity to talk about values and what the right thing is. And kids are spending so much time on social media where where it's a scary place. It can be
I know. Yeah. And you're like, gosh, if I can get a book in a kid's hand, that is the goal. And a good story does stir up conversation. I mean, you think about, a great movie you watch or, a good book you read and you immediately want to talk about it with someone. And so I think having a good story is a good, sparks good conversation, especially within a family. That is the hope. Yeah. And that is my hope for writing for middle grade is I want to get kids reading and I want to get kids, talking about reading and talking about story. And middle grade is sort of, again, that sweet spot in childhood, where it's sort of the last ditch effort to make a kid a lifelong reader. A lot of statistics show that if kids get hooked on reading in the middle grade years, most likely they will continue to read throughout their lifetime. So middle grade is just such a unique opportunity to grab those kids and make them readers. And I think that's another reason that I just get so excited to write for that grade. And just the humbling thought of, what if Sherlock Academy was that book that hooked a kid to make him read for the rest of his life? I mean, that's the ultimate goal of every author out there, So that's just a really exciting and humbling thought.
Well, I love the passion and the excitement as you're talking about that. You're passionate about your book, but you're so much more passionate about, wow, my book could inspire a kid to be a lifelong reader. What a gift that is to give to a kid.
Yes. Yeah. No, that is the hope. And the hope is that they'll be inspired to write their own stories. I mean, I was a voracious reader in middle grade, and it inspired me so much to write my own stories. And I still draw from that well of my childhood, of my own experiences and the books I read and the imagination I had as a kid. It is still serving me today in writing books for, children. So I hope that, my books will inspire kids to go out and write their own books, and then we just keep having generations of good books out there.
Absolutely. Imagine you are reading Sherlock Academy with your kids and they're inspired to sit down with pen and paper. I don't know if kids actually do that anymore, or fingers and keyboards. And instead of doing the latest TikTok video, they actually sit down and craft their own story. What a gift that would be to those kids. Yes,
I think so. And I mean, obviously we know literature stands the test of time. Social media doesn't. It comes and goes in a flash, whereas a book will stay here. Even if it discontinues as publishing, the people who have the book, they have it for life, So there is something, there's something lasting about literature versus social media. Which gives it more value.
Absolutely. Well, I know folks are going to want to know where they can find out more about Sherlock Academy and find out more about F.C. Shaw. So tell everybody where they can connect with you, please.
Yes. So I love Instagram now that we've been, dissing social media. But I am, I'm on Instagram at author F.C. Shaw. That's my favorite place to be. And then I do have a blog that is writerfcshaw.com. That's more geared towards creativity in general. And then all of my books are available on Amazon and through Barnes & Noble. And, but I always tell people that I have a secret stash of my books. And so if they want to personally message me for like an autographed copy, I am more than happy to autograph one and mail it to them. So that's always kind of fun. I used to do a lot of school tours and be able to like, sign books for kids in person, and we will just see what the state of the world is like if that'll come back. So in the meantime, they can message me and I can mail them an autographed copy.
There you go. Yes. Being an educational magician, I mourn with you. It's going to be a while before there are going to be school assemblies, I'm afraid, which is really sad, but I kind of understand it. Hey, we've had a great time speaking to the author of Sherlock Academy. The last chapter in that series is out right now, Moriarty's Final Threat, and she's also the author of The Magical Flight of Dodie F.C. Shaw. Farrah, thanks so much for spending time with us tonight.
Oh, thank you so much. This was such a pleasure. It's one of my favorite things, is to talk about story and creativity and kids, and I love it. It gives my soul a life.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are going to bring you a special surprise guest, and you are going to love it. Hey, you are just such an amazing person. We are so happy that you're part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family. We do this for you. We do this for you and your kid to help you find fantastic books that will help you and your kids grow closer together, to create those memories, to start that conversation that is going to last a lifetime. That's why we do it. And I want to thank the folks who helped me do it today, starting with our guest, F.C. Shaw. Be sure to check out Sherlock Academy. I also want to thank my incredible team, my producer, Fatima Khan. I want to thank my awesome author ambassador, Peggy Cotto, my beautiful wife. Thank you for all the support you give me. I want to thank Augie the dog. He always has my back, watching me, taking care of security here in the studio. And, of course, we want to thank you. Thank you for taking time to be with us today. And, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.